tariffs and non-tariff barriers on U.S. goods to zero and stop buying Russian oil. President Donald Trump has warned that bad things could follow if Iran fails to reach a deal with the U.S. as pressure mounts after Tehran's January protest crackdown. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify in a congressional investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Days before a planned vote on holding them in contempt, the couple deny any wrongdoing and say they have already shared all they know. A U.S. federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from ending temporary protected status for more than 350,000 Haitians, holding potential deportations amid Haiti's escalating gang violence. Meanwhile, U.S. District Judge Anna Reines has said that claims that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem acted with hostility towards non-white immigrants. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has announced that all DHS field officers in Minneapolis will be issued body-worn cameras, a move backed by President Donald Trump as a step towards transparency, as the Justice Department also now conducts a civil rights investigation into Petty's death. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said engagement with China makes us stronger following his visit, but stressed the UK is clear-eyed about security threats from Beijing and that protecting national security is non-negotiable. European Union, headed by Anna Peirce, head of the Middle East and North Africa Bilateral Instruments Unit for Syria and the Middle East, held talks with the Syrian director of the International Cooperation Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, Qutaiba Kadish. They explored ways to expand cooperation. OpenAI has explored alternatives to NVIDIA's AI chips, citing speed limits in inference tasks like coding. While NVIDIA remains dominant in training chips, the move could test its AI leadership as talks between the two companies continue. Now, if we start this hour with U.S. and Iran, Iran's leadership is increasingly worried that a potential U.S. strike could trigger a new wave of mass protests and threaten the regime's hold on power. Sources say senior officials have warned Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei that public anger following last month's deadly crackdown has reached to a point where fear is no longer a deterrent. The official said many Iranians are prepared to confront security forces again, and that even a limited U.S. attack could embolden demonstrators and cause irreparable damage to the political system. The warning comes as tensions with Washington rise and U.S. military assets arrive in the Middle East. Analysts say while the streets are quiet for now, deep grievances over repression, economic decline and corruption continue to fuel the risk of renewed unrest. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Nirmal Abraham. He is a political analyst, joins us live from Kochi, India. Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at Thank you. Now, looking at this, what's the situation like in Iran? If you can share any insights or reports.
Well, I think they're right about the fact that the protests could intensify if U.S. attacks. And the psychology behind that is pretty simple. If you look at some of the protests or similar regime changes that happened in the last 3 years, for example, we can take Asia. You know, there were similar protests in Nepal, there were protests against the government in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. And in all these cases, one thing was common. There was an opposition. There was an internal opposition which was strong and united. But in the case of Iran, there is no opposition. There is no clear opposition. So what the people of Iran would want is an external opposition and an external pressure to be applied so they can also get out on the streets and attack and tell them that they're not backing down. So it is true that if the U.S. attacks, they are likely to, people are likely to reinstigate protests, and that might affect or apply more pressure to the present regime.
Right. And how dangerous is it that if U.S. attacks, this regime just supposedly falls? But since I don't know of any political strong opposition leader over there, except of, some people in the Iranian diaspora around the world. So how dangerous would that vacuum be? Do you think that something like, even if this current leader is removed, is there any chance that this kind of regime would continue there?
Yeah, I guess the difference between, say, Trump quotes Venezuela very often about regime change, but the difference between Venezuela and Iran is that, number one, Venezuela, all they had to do was take out Maduro and things would change. The difference between Iran and Venezuela is that, number one, Iran is way larger. It's twice the size of Venezuela, thrice the population of Venezuela. And their structure is very complicated. There is a strong hierarchy as well. I mean, starting with the supreme leader, and they also have a security council, a guardian council, an assembly of experts who may have already decided the successor to the supreme leader, the IRGC, which is a very loyal militant group, and their own military. So it makes it difficult, also to add the proxies as well, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas. Although they're weaker significantly, they may also chip in. So it's not going to be as easy as Venezuela. So if a protest erupts, it could be damaging, not just, if Iran decides to retaliate, which I don't think is the case, because what gives US the confidence is that the last two times they attacked Iran, in 2025 and 2020, what Iran did was a symbolic attack in US air bases in the Middle East. And that was also informed prior. So maybe that's what US is expecting. But if Iran decides not to back down and aggressively attack, it might not only destabilize the Middle East, it might also affect us in India. It might affect the whole world, because we know that the Strait of Hormuz passes through there, and Iran, if they want to, can block trade. And if they do block trade in the Strait of Hormuz, it means that 20% of the oil trade might also get disrupted, which eventually will reflect as inflation in India and the rest of the world. And also there will be delays in trade. So that could possibly affect the rest of the world as well. But at the moment, US is of the assumption that the last two times they attacked Iran, because they're significantly weaker, may not attack aggressively. That's the expectation. And we should also hope for the same, because otherwise we might also get affected.
Right. And, as we know that US is the one who first walked off the nuclear treaty with Iran, right? Do you think that US was underestimating Iran back then? How do you analyze the capacity of Iran in terms of even counter attack towards US and also their capacity?
Compared to some of the other nations, I think Iran is prepared, because if you look at other nations, they're not, militantly prepared 24/7. Iran is militantly prepared. And so America is very much aware of that fact. As I said, they don't just have a military, they have the IRGC, which is pretty strong. They also have the proxies that can chip in. So it's not going to be that easy. So maybe in the past, I would say US must have underestimated, but now I'm pretty sure that they're exactly aware of the numbers of the ballistic missiles that are left, of the nuclear capacity that is left. And so, which is why they want the nuclear capacity, the nuclear program to end once and for all. But more than that, I think what the US is trying to do is force a regime change more than anything else, because if the regime changes, everything else comes into place. Because just like in Iraq and in Afghanistan, it might be the US, because there is no opposition in Iraq, it could be the US acting as a de facto government, maybe with puppet government in Iran. So that would solve all the issues. And the reason why they're trying so hard now in February 2026 is because, one, in October and November later this year, there are two elections that are significant to both Israel and the US. 2026 October, there's an election in Israel. In November, there's a midterm for the US. That could really swing either way, and that's why they would want it now, because there is a strong right-wing leader in Israel and a strong right-wing leader in the United States, both with the same goal. So they would want to do it now. And now that people haven't forgotten what happened 2-3 years back in Israel, what Hamas did, they can also set the context as see that they're supporting the proxies, funding the proxies. It is time to end this. So they can use that that appeal to the rest of the world to attack Iran. So this, I think, even for the people of Iran, that's what they're hoping for.
And if they do so, how dangerous would the escalation be? Yes, I understand that, as you rightfully highlight, that this could be a good time to gain momentum for Israel's current government and the current administration in US. But how will this affect the regional people or the neighboring countries around Iran, even India?
I think if there is a spillover, let's say there is a spillover, if that happens, it could affect the Arab nations because, as you know, the US has air bases in 19 different countries in the Middle East. So when they have so many different military capabilities, all of them come under the scanner of Iran. Even Israel comes under the scanner of Iran. So if Iran decides to retaliate without any qualms or worries at all, that could spill over and affect the other nations as well on a strategic and geopolitical front. On a war front is what I would say. But on an economic front, as I said before, it could disrupt trade, it could rise up oil prices. And as an Indian, what I'm hoping for is either the conflict to end or a negotiation to go forward and have a deal, because it could benefit India. Because at the moment, the Chabahar port that we are trying to build in collaboration with Iran is blocked out because of the sanctions. We can't do anything about it. And that's very important to us because we can bypass Pakistan and offer trade to Central Asia as well as Europe. So that is being blocked. And even with sanctions, Iran used to give us discounted oil and extended credit periods. That's also gone now because of the sanctions. So if they get into a deal, or if there is a regime change, that could positively affect India. But if there isn't a regime change and Iran is fighting it, and if there is a spillover, it would not only affect the Middle East, it would also affect India and the rest of the world.
Yes, indeed. We will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Nirmal Abraham for sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to UK. Following the latest release of Epstein files, UK Cabinet Minister Darren Jones has spoken in Parliament, urging anyone with relevant information to come forward. Jones has specifically addressed former UK Government Minister Peter Mandelson, condemning his actions. He has also said Mandelson's behaviour was unacceptable and an insult to the women and girls affected by Epstein's crimes. Let's listen into some of his statements.
His victims must be our first priority. As the Prime Minister has said, anybody with relevant information must come forward and cooperate with investigations so that Jeffrey Epstein's victims can get the justice they have been denied for too long. Released by the US Department of Justice were documents which highlighted the close nature of the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson, including alleged financial transactions when Peter Mandelson was a Labour Member of Parliament and later Minister. For the avoidance of doubt, this information was not known by the government until the release of documents by the Department of Justice on Friday.
Now, the Scottish National Party and Reform UK have reported Peter Mandelson to the Metropolitan Police. This comes after disclosed emails suggest that Peter Mandelson has forwarded internal government information to Epstein when he served as business secretary in 2009. Documents in the newly released Epstein files also show that Mandelson provided advance notice to Epstein of a €500 billion European Union bailout that was reportedly aimed at saving the euro. Mandelson has since resigned from the Labour Party amid the controversy. Meanwhile, the Met has confirmed that it received several reports and that it will now review them to determine if they meet the threshold for criminal investigation. Moreover, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has ordered an urgent investigation into Mandelson's contact with Epstein. Starmer has also called for removal of Mandelson from the House of Lords. Now for this, we welcome retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshu Singh. She's a Defence and International Relations Analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Colonel, for joining us again. Now, looking at this, how politically damaging is this, once again, Epstein-linked controversy for current Labour government, given that former senior minister has now resigned and the Prime Minister has ordered an urgent investigation?
Good morning, Asuma. See, the Epstein scandal is one of these biggest scandals, and if the report runs into 3 million pages, you can understand the enormous information it would be having. So somewhere it shows the erosion of Western soft power. See, Western influences globally are not sustained merely by military or economic power, but by moral credibility. So when people who are in helm of affairs, they are caught into the web of such accusations, see, they are accountable. So somewhere the justice has been denied to people, because earlier also we had seen Me Too movement has taken place, but no one was brought to justice. So now, after the US Justice Department has, released these documents, we see a lot of people are getting caught in this web, whether it's Prince Andrew or now Norway's royal princess also. So somewhere, we feel that when a crown princess or a people like in UK, they are appearing in the Epstein's correspondence without any criminal charges also, we feel that somewhere it is not a propaganda. It is the Western scandals are doing the job itself by bringing out the true face of people. On one side, they want to tell the entire world. This is the hypocrisy. It is actually the US, UK, and all these places, they want to lecture the entire world about women's rights, about criticizing the authoritarian representation, claim moral leadership. So when things like this happen on international forums, I think it somewhere shows us that except the judiciary, there is no firewall which is there to protect common people, because all these girls who have been molested, some of them are not even adults, they're juveniles. So I think the fact is that such people have to be brought to justice, and I'm very happy that UK is asking people to come forward and give any information they have. So I think they are now taking a very, very serious stand on this particular subject. Asuma.
Yes. But do you think the damage is already done? Do you think it's not too late? What do you think? Also, the fact that the Mandelson has forwarded internal government information to Epstein, right? So if this disclosed emails are accurate, how serious are these implications?
People like Epstein, they know with whom they are dealing, and that is why, to keep all the corners secure, he was sending the emails addressing to these people to his own email address. So he was very, very sharp. So when we talk about the damage is not arising because of the scrutiny. It is arising because of long standing elite opacity. Transparency strengthens institutions, and silence destroys them. When people are actually coming out and speaking, we are getting to know the dirtier side of the royal and elites and the financiers and the businessmen and the politicians. So I think legitimacy of where, morality is a currency in a geopolitical world, such morality, when the veil is taken off from it, it shows that, the authority collapses, the moral authority collapses, and domestic influence collapses with it. See, these countries, wherever the Epstein files are reaching, the information is reaching, somewhere the moral fabric is becoming very, very weak. So I think it somewhere strengthen the narrative of that elites are beyond justice, and only normal citizens, they are abiding by the law and they are punished by the law. So unless some examples are set, I think the damage will never ever be undone, and independent courts should be formed to bring these people to justice.
Yes, 100%. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Shit Singh, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back. Now, moving on, US President Donald Trump has said that his administration might have some good news soon on its push to end the nearly 4-year war triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Let's listen into what Trump has shared.
We settled 8 wars, and I think we're doing very well with Ukraine and Russia. For the first time, I'm saying that. I think we're going to maybe have some good news. We're losing 25,000 people a month are being killed in that war, ridiculous war. 25,000. It was 31,000 last month. Think of it. Young, beautiful kids, you know, the kids of parents, their parents. It doesn't affect us in one way, but in another way, it's 25,000 souls that if I can solve it, you know, we're not spending money like Biden did. He gave $350 billion away. I make everyone pay. And the United Nations, you know, they're a little bit involved, but if you look, take a look at what's happening, the countries of Europe are paying us for the weapons. So we have NATO paying, we send missiles over there, they pay us in full. It doesn't cost us 10 cents. And we make money, I guess, but I don't even want to talk about that because what I really want to do is save those people from dying. They lose, Mary, can you imagine 25,000 to 30,000 people a month? That's like a stadium full of people every single month. And, you know, I was blessed with something where I can get these things done. Got 8 of them done. I thought all 8 were going to be more difficult than this one. I thought my relationship with President Putin would give us a, you know, much easier road. But there's tremendous hatred between Zelensky and Putin. Tremendous hatred. I mean, it's a shame, but it's taken longer than we thought. I did call up President Putin, and he's agreed. He's put it out too. They have the same cold wave that we do. Maybe different because it's pretty far away, but it's the equivalent. And Ukraine's a very cold country. It's much colder than us. It's colder than, they say, on average, it's Canada or colder. And on top of that, they have a tremendous cold wave. And I asked him if he wouldn't shoot for a period of 1 week, no missiles going into Kiev or any other towns, and he's agreed to do it.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia has largely observed a ceasefire on Ukraine's energy infrastructure as Kyiv prepared for the next round of trilateral talks on how to end the war. Zelensky has added that Russia has not carried out any targeted missile or drone strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure in the last 24 hours, although energy facilities in frontline areas have come under fire. Let's listen into what he has shared.
Сьогодні на селекторі були всі регіони, де ситуація зараз особливо складна. Фактично, це області центральної України. Також це прикордонні громади з Росією, де постійні обстріли, бойові дії. На Дніпровщині, особливо в Нікополі, були пошкодження ліній електропередач через обстріли. Також в Павлоградському районі і в інших громадах неподалік фронту продовжуються російські удари, в тому числі є пошкодження місцевої інфраструктури, місцевих об'єктів енергетики. На Дніпровщині та у Запоріжжі знову була під ударами Укрзалізниця, наша логістика, але зв'язок між областями, наше транспортне сполучення ми зберігаємо. Важливо, що сьогодні протягом дня не було ракетних ударів та шахедів проти інфраструктури. І це демонструє, що коли є у Америки мотив справді змінити ситуацію, ситуація може змінитись.
Now we welcome back retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshu Singh. She's a Defense and International Relations Analyst. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel, for staying with us. Now, you know, we have been hopeful many times and let down. This time, what's your analysis? Can we be hopeful?
Asuma, yes, this time we can be hopeful, but we have to see at what cost this peace is coming. See, 4-year-long war, people are displaced. There's a crisis, you know, people don't have food, they don't have shelter, there's no energy in such a biting cold. And medical facilities are not there. So people are actually tired of this war. Zelensky was used as a tool by America and NATO countries to be put up against Russia. And Russian president, he only had one issue, that NATO should not come to its backyard. And Zelensky was very clear that he wanted to be a part of NATO. So when this entire thing is coming to an end, see, the place which has been chosen for the talks is Abu Dhabi. It is not Paris or Brussels. So somewhere the West has been already sidelined. Secondly, you know, if Ukraine comes to the table, it is facing 2 brutal choices. One is, now so many people have been killed and Russia is going to claim some of its territory. So it is not a win-win. Secondly, there is no guarantee that in future a war like this will not erupt. So somewhere Zelensky is at a stage where he's actually losing it all. Moreover, Russia somehow has been managed to ask for what they want, and they will surely get it, because knowing President Putin, the way he has faced, as a child, he has seen the Second World War, and he is a battle-hardened and a war-hardened person. So somewhere he is going to have the way out. As far as US is concerned, see, everything is very, very transactional for US. They have already taken so much of part from Ukraine in terms of taking their rare earth minerals, gases, and other things. So the only person who has, going to gain something out of it is President Trump. Rest, I don't think anybody is going to be a winner in this entire conversation, even after the ceasefire comes through.
Right. And lastly, what about territorial dispute that they have, the Donbas region? What happens to that?
See, Russia is not going to leave Donbas, because the ceasefire, as far as I believe, is going to be where it is as it is. So Russian troops will not move back. They will occupy the territory, and Zelensky will have to give up if he wants to end this war, because there is no way out. Russia is very, very clear. They don't want any of this mishappening again in future. Moreover, President Putin is very, very clear. He believes in the integrated USSR. He does not believe in the current Russia as of now. We've seen earlier also, he's taken so many places. So his policy is very clear. If so many people from Russian side have also died, and it is a long stretch fatigue which has been caused, they are not going to go back. I think the boundaries will be sealed on the current location of the armies. That is all, Asuma.
With that, I'd like to thank Lieutenant Colonel Singh for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout. Now we move on to U.S. According to U.S. President Donald Trump, U.S. lawmakers are nearing a resolution to end a partial government shutdown that began last Saturday. After Congress failed to reach an agreement on government funding, President Trump has said that he has spoken with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, both of whom have also indicated that a deal to end the gridlock is close. Let's listen into what he has shared.
Well, I spoke with Speaker Johnson, I spoke with Leader Thune, and I think they're pretty close to a resolution. We were at 5.6% GDP, and we lost 1.5 points because of the 42-day shutdown. Think of that. We would have been at 7. Nobody.
Now, President Trump has clarified that he's not tearing down the Kennedy Center, despite his sudden announcement over the weekend to shut it for 2 years of major renovations starting in July. Trump has said the building is in poor condition, calling it dilapidated and actually sort of dangerous, and that he plans to reuse steel and marble in renovations. He has emphasized the closure is pragmatic, citing safety and efficiency for construction. Critics question whether Trump has the authority to unilaterally shut down the Arts Center, which was created by and funded by Congress. Since taking office, he replaced board members and installed himself as the chairman, the first for a sitting president. Now, renovations are projected to cost around $200 million, with Congress previously allocating $257 million for capital repairs. Despite concerns from some lawmakers and artists, Trump's allies say he's a master builder and knows best. That's all we have time for. Keep watching News6 World for more news updates from around the world.
in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Israel says the Rafah crossing will open today for limited medical transfers from Gaza. Only 150 people a day are allowed to exit, with 50 permitted to enter from Egypt. President Donald Trump says he hopes to reach a deal with Iran. The comments follow a warning from Iran's supreme leader that a US attack would spark regional war. Russia says its offer to extend New START limits remains on the table with the United States. Moscow calls territory the hardest issue in Ukraine talks and rejects any NATO force presence there as the sides gear up for talks in Abu Dhabi. Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte faces fresh impeachment complaints. Activists allege corruption and abuse of trust as she eyes the 2028 presidency. Right-wing candidate Laura Fernandez wins Costa Rica's presidential election in a landslide. She secures a first-round victory after pledging a hard crackdown on violence linked to drug trafficking. Former UK ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, resigns from the Labour Party. The move follows fresh reports about his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Bad Bunny uses his Grammy acceptance speech to denounce US immigration raids. The Puerto Rican star tells the crowd migrants are human and American too. China executes 4 members of the Bai family mafia linked to scam centers in Myanmar. The move is part of a broad crackdown on transnational fraud networks. Those are the headlines for the hour. But our top story. The latest release of Jeffrey Epstein investigation files includes holiday photos of Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie sent by Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, to Epstein in 2011 and 2012. These emails contradict Andrew's previous claims of severing ties with Epstein after the financier's 2008 conviction. The newly released documents, totaling over 3 million pages, also contain disturbing images, including one showing Andrew on the floor with a woman or girl. The timeline renews scrutiny on the royal family's continued association with Epstein, raising concerns about boundaries during the scandal. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche confirmed that while the files contain evidence of Epstein's links to powerful individuals, there will be no further prosecutions. Meanwhile, Epstein survivors are still seeking justice, with many feeling betrayed by the accidental release of their personal information in the documents. As public intrigue intensifies, key figures connected to Epstein, including former Presidents Bill Clinton and, of course, current President Donald Trump, remain embroiled in controversy. While Clinton denies any wrongdoing, new documents highlight the former president's ties to Epstein, with photos and communications revealing frequent interactions. Joining us now to discuss this is Shruti Dasgupta, an international affairs analyst, joining us live from New Delhi. Shruti, thank you very much for joining us. This saga continues, Shruti, and of course we have had the Justice Department say that this is now done and dusted. But they've also said that the Justice Department won't be prosecuting any new individuals, and so now the public is kind of hung in this limbo to decide for themselves what truly happened, with no new responsibility or allegations coming out or confirmed after the release of these files. How do you analyse the Justice Department's handling of them? And of course, this story is one that hasn't been very far from the headlines at any point in time during Donald Trump's second term. Do you think this will quench the thirst that the American public has for the release of the Epstein files?
Well, this is a giant dump that they've given to the public of USA, and they've said they're done and dusted. So what they basically mean is there's going to be no more cases on anybody. The redacted parts are going to stay redacted. We do not know how much of it is still kept with them, or who is actually being protected, why there are going to be no more convictions. And specifically, his campaign ran that there are bigger, dirtier secrets stuck in the Epstein folders. What they've done is they've tried to normalize what he said later after becoming president, when Trump said that he's seen everything and that his government's been, his people have been combed through those files and found there is no criminal wrongdoing. And that is exactly what this dump is saying, that we've dumped it, watch it, enjoy it, get your curiosity out and dusted with. We are not going to be prosecuting anybody new because what you're seeing is not criminal. It may be morally wrong, ethically questionable, but it is not criminal in any way or form. So this particular ghost that has been haunting Trump administration and was haunting Biden administration it has been laid to rest according to the Department of Justice. They have washed their hands of it and they've said, this is it, we can't help you anymore. Does this give closure to the victims? Of course not, because the victims claim that there was a lot more than just partying happening and weird pictures and paintings. There was a whole larger conversation that they wanted to have on this and pin people in power on the board and have them answerable. But that is not something that they got. What they got was a revelation of their names, identities. They got a large barrage of photographs, documents, emails. Some of those emails were just emails between two Epstein brothers or Epstein and some other contact, referencing somebody, but never a direct contact with the person that they were referencing. So they've kind of weaved a web which is so convoluted that it is difficult to pin the blame on anybody, and there is no justice inside.
And what about the people whose previous statements have been undermined by this? Of course, we've had the obvious one, Prince Andrew, who said he had no contact with Epstein past a certain year. These documents released disprove that. We have elusive emails from the likes of the Duke and also his wife, Sarah Ferguson. They've been in the files. We've, of course, had Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, who said that he cut ties with Epstein. Before 2011, we've seen an email correspondence with them, even arranging to meet up. Now, we don't know if that meeting happened, of course. But, of course, we've also had Donald Trump, who his comments have been undermined as well, contradicted and conversations about Trump, not direct communication with him, but regarding him, even as late as his first term in office. Do you believe that these people are going to explain themselves? Are they going to be held to accountability for releasing these statements and then only being found out that they're undermined later, especially those that are currently in power in the Trump administration?
Well, let's start with Melania. There was an email where Melania was being very, very friendly with in an email with Epstein or somebody in his contact list, or even, I believe, referencing that she'll meet them somewhere else. So it doesn't just start anywhere else, it starts at home. So there are a lot of people who stayed in contact with Epstein because that is where the power was probably coming through. There's a larger conversation where people believe that he was used to money launder, he was used to help people, kind of exchange favors, grant power or access through his parties, and not just the dirty ones, just normal parties as well, was a way to meet and greet and get around in the world of powers, of movers and shakers. So there are a lot of people who continue to associate with him after 2008. And that lies the crux of the problem. That is why they have just dumped this. They have said, we are not prosecuting. We do not know what was redacted. We do not know who was protected. What we do know is that they're very happy to point the finger at Bill Clinton and never look at the three fingers pointing back towards their own administration. the people are going to justify it, said, oh, it was just a casual conversation. Oh, I didn't know what he was talking about. And this is just a conversation of somebody having a conversation about Trump, kind of a allegation. And they're going to try and tell you that, you're paid for, or if you ask the difficult questions, they are going to try and witch hunt anybody who's going to showcase that the people in power today are just as corrupt and in somebody else's pocket as they were when Epstein was alive and they were in his pocket. So this is the dirty game of politics and power, and they are going to try and find excuses and hope that the amount that they have dumped on public is going to erase public memory and increase their immunity to the sensational drama that was the Epstein files. And then they're going to just slightly walk back on their statements and have that kind of news buried and say it was all done and over with. There is nothing new to see, while the rest, the victims, the people who have voted for Trump on the basis that he's going to bring peace to the victims, justice to the victims, find themselves at a loss there, with no end to their quest for justice in sight.
Shruti, do stay with us as we move on to our next story. We have some breaking news coming in from West Asia, and Israel's military says it carried out an airstrike in southern Lebanon, targeting an operative from the Hezbollah group in the town of Ansariyah. The Israel Defense Forces say the strike was conducted a short while ago, and the military has not released further details about the target or the outcome of the strike. There has been no immediate response from Hezbollah or Lebanese authorities as of yet. And the incident comes amid continued tensions along the Israeli-Lebanon border. Of course, we'll continue to bring you updates as soon as we get them on that developing story. We now move on. And the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, says that Moscow's proposal to the United States on extending the limits of the New START nuclear arms treaty remains on the table. However, he warned that if the treaty expires, it may not lead to an immediate catastrophe, but should alarm the global community. Meanwhile, Medvedev described the territorial question as the most complicated issue in any Ukraine peace talks. He also made it clear that Russia would not accept the deployment of NATO member forces in Ukraine, rejecting the idea of a European NATO contingent on Ukrainian soil. Shruti, some strong statements there from Medvedev. Let's start with the START treaty, which is of course yet to be signed by both the United States and Russia, set to expire very soon. If a new START expires, would the world enter effectively a post-arms control era here?
Well, that is a risk that we run, because on Feb 5th, when this expires, although it has been held in abeyance since 2023 under the Biden administration, we have not seen a blatant nuclear threat coming from either of these two nations. There is positioning, of course, specifically under Trump, where he positioned his nuclear sub somewhere in the Arctic and sent an indication to Russia saying that they are there and they are ready and armed. Beyond that, there has been no other nuclear arms race between US and Russia, despite the START treaty being held in abeyance since 2023. So the 2 years running now to 3 years, although the treaty has not been in effect, these two administrations have managed to not turn this into a giant geopolitical threat for the rest of the world. However, if it expires, does it mean that there's going to be a nuclear arm race? Maybe. We have the Iran factor happening. We have the world in a very, very turbulent phase. We have a very aggressive USA, specifically when he says that he sent an armada to look after Iran, and he has already done his actions in Venezuela. So there is an anxiety in the world. So any kind of a treaty which restricts two major powers of the world from being very, very anti each other or their vassals or their aligned states is going to create more tensions. There might be an arms race, there might be heightened tensions, but as they have stated that it is always signing a new START would also mean that the USA has to specify its position with related to Ukraine, because that was the reason why it was held in abeyance. And it also needs the territorial issues that have been part of the peace plans and have been pushed back and forth need to be addressed.
Shruti, of course, we're gearing up for another round of talks in Abu Dhabi, trilateral talks between the United States, Russia and Ukraine. Medvedev there calling territory the biggest sticking point when it comes to negotiations. Main issue being the Donbass, of course, which Russia controls 80% of, but wants 100% of course. Is he acknowledging that Russia expects permanent territorial gains if they want peace whatsoever here?
I believe it is very essential for the way they have positioned themselves. They want Donbass. They're liberating it, as they have said. They're calling it a Republic of Luhansk and Donetsk in that region, as in giving sovereignty to the people over there, aligned towards Russia. They have Crimea, which is part of Russia, as they have stated. Maybe it will change hands, or maybe be given a sovereignty or a different version of democracy over there after there is peace in Ukraine. So Ukraine should understand that they do not come from the place of power that they've been trying to project for the past 1 year. Their loans are signed, but the money doesn't trickle through. They've taken heavy casualties there. Until and unless they are able to draw USA in to kind of step in and run the show for them, they are unable to depend on even the European nations who have diminished armies themselves. They're having problems with conscriptions. They're having problems with military equipment. They need to tech up. They need to defense up. And no matter the number of talks they have, Ukraine continues to want everything back and have Russia pay for the war that has happened while Russia is winning the war. And that is something that is going to lead them to La La Land, where they're not going to find a solution to the problem that is the war. If they actually want peace, unfortunately, as a losing nation, they're going to have to cut off a piece of themselves and give it to Russia, rather than have Russia take not just Donbass, maybe probably more. And if that happens through military might, Europe is going to face further tensions. They're always going to feel under threat. I hope this is solved on the peace table, because then it will lead to a new START treaty. Then it is going to be a reset of the world order. Then it is going to lead to new trade treaties. There are sanctions on nations for dealing with Russia, including my own India. So I find that this peace has to happen on the table, because if it is won through military might, it may not be to Ukraine's flavor as much as they want to be.
Shruti Dasgupta, thank you very much for joining us on the News X World. It's a pleasure to talk to you, as always. We turn now to East Asia, and China has executed 4 members of the Bai family mafia, a powerful crime dynasty linked to cyber scam centres in the southeastern nation of Myanmar. State media say they were among 21 relatives and associates convicted of fraud, murder and violent crimes by a court in Gyeongdong. The Bai family once dominated the border town of Luoqiang, running casinos, red light districts and large-scale online scam operations. Authorities say the group controlled dozens of compounds where torture and abuse were routine, and their crimes led to multiple deaths of Chinese citizens. The executions follow last week's killing of 11 members of another mafia clan, the Ming family, as Beijing intensifies its crackdown on scam networks across Southeast Asia. China says the move is meant to deter future scammers, as hundreds of thousands have been trafficked into online fraud operations targeting mostly Chinese victims. Of course, this is a huge development coming out of China. The Bai family operated out of this town of Luoqiang, a lawless hub in northern Myanmar near the Chinese border that for years functioned as a safe haven for transnational crime syndicates. The group maintained close links with local militias and armed factions, allowing them to operate with near impunity until recent joint operations by China and Myanmar forced these crackdowns. Chinese courts in Gyeongdong have increasingly taken jurisdiction over cases involving crimes against Chinese abroad, even as when the act occurred outside China. Joining us now is Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, an international relations expert. joining us live from New Delhi. Okay, just bear with us 5 minutes. Okay. These investigators say the Bai family ran sophisticated scam factories specializing in romance scams, fake cryptocurrency investment platforms, phishing and identity theft, business email compromise fraud. And these victims were primarily Chinese speakers, but also targeted people across East Asia, North America and Europe. They trafficked workers, mainly lured by fake jobs ads, and they were held in guarded compounds, forced to work 12 to 18 hours a day and sold or transferred between gangs as property. Okay, we're going to move on to our next story. And the United States President Donald Trump has announced that the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts will temporarily close for renovations starting this July. The 2-year closure will coincide with the 250th Independence Day celebration. Trump said halting entertainment operations will speed up the construction and deliver higher quality results. Several leading performers have already cancelled shows following Trump's takeover, including producers of Hamilton and soprano Renee Fleming. The board, handpicked by Trump, must approve the closure. The Kennedy Center, a national cultural landmark, will undergo complete rebuilding aimed at making it the finest performing arts facility in the world, according to Donald Trump. As the UK Treasury is offering voluntary exit packages of up to $136,790 to officials as part of plans to cut hundreds of jobs. The Finance Minister, Rachel Reeves, aims to reduce staff by around 300 from the Treasury's 2,100-person workforce by 2030. The cuts are part of a broader effort to reduce administrative costs by 16% across the UK government. The Treasury could also make some redundancies if voluntary departures do not meet targets. A spokesperson explained that the Treasury, now the largest it has ever been, is aiming to return to more normal levels during this period of stability. Doctors Without Borders, also known as the MSF, says Israel's decision to end its operations in Gaza is a pretext to block humanitarian aid. The medical charity warned that the move forces organizations to choose between risking staff safety or halting critical care for people in desperate need. Israel announced it was terminating MSF's work after the group refused to provide a list of Palestinian staff as requested by authorities. MSF condemned the decision, calling it an obstruction to delivering essential medical services in the war-torn territory. Now we turn to some news from the entertainment world, and at the 2026 Grammy Awards, Kendrick Lamar and SZA's collaboration Luther took home the prestigious Record of the Year trophy. The song triumphed over a strong field of nominees, including Lady Gaga's Abracadabra, Bad Bunny's DTMF, Billie Eilish's Wildflower, and Bruno Mars and Rosé's APT. During the ceremony, Recording Academy CEO Harvey Mason Jr. gave an emotional speech highlighting the power of music during uncertain times. Cher presented the 2026 Lifetime Achievement Award and humorously flubbed the announcement, naming Luther Vandross instead of Luther. While not the winner, the song was indeed inspired by the legendary R&B artists, sampling Vandross and Cheryl Lynn's 1982 rendition of If This World Were Mine. Along with Kendrick Lamar and SZA, the win was shared by the producers and engineers behind the song, including Jack Antonoff, Scott Bridgway, Son Wave, and Kamasi Washington, among many others. Luther has since become part of a chart-topping hit, spending 13 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights.
Hello and welcome. I am Ellie Richardson and you are watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The United States and India have agreed on a trade deal after a phone call between President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Modi. The US will lower tariffs on Indian imports to 18%, while India agrees to reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers on the US, goods to zero, and stop buying Russian oil. President Donald Trump warned that bad things could follow if Iran fails to reach a deal with the US as pressure mounts after Tehran's January protest crackdown. Former US President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify in a congressional investigation into Jeffrey Epstein days before a planned vote on holding them in contempt. The couple deny wrongdoing and say they've already shared all they know. A US federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from ending temporary protected status for more than 350,000 Haitians, halting potential deportations amid Haiti's escalating gang violence. Meanwhile, US District Judge Anna Reyes said claims that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem acted with hostility towards non-white immigrants. The US Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has announced that all DHS field officers in Minneapolis will be issued body-worn cameras, a move backed by President Donald Trump as a step towards transparency, as the Justice Department also now conducts a civil rights investigation into Pritty's death. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said engagement with China makes US stronger following his visit, but stressed the UK is clear-eyed about security threats from Beijing and that protecting national security is non-negotiable. The European Union, headed by Anna Pears, head of the Middle East and North Africa Bilateral Instruments Unity for Syria and the Middle East, held talks with the Syrian director of the International Cooperation Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, Qatishba Qadish, as they explored ways to expand cooperation. OpenAI has explored alternatives to NVIDIA's AI chips, citing speed limits in interference tasks like coding. While NVIDIA remains dominant in training chips, the move could test its AI leadership as talks between the two companies continue. Now for your top story this hour. The US Chamber of Commerce President Suzanne P. Clark has welcomed the progress on a long-awaited trade deal between the United States and India. She has congratulated both governments for agreeing to reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers, a move that she claims will foster even more private sector collaboration between the two countries. Meanwhile, Indian ministers and ambassadors have also expressed their enthusiasm. Amit Shah, India's Home Minister, has noted that the reduction of tariffs to 18% could strengthen India-US trade ties. Vinay Mohan Kwata, India's ambassador to the US, and Rajnath Singh, India's defence minister, have described the deal as a big win for India-US relations under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. India's External Affairs Minister has also welcomed the trade announcement, stressing the job creation and innovation opportunities that it can potentially bring to India. We are now being joined by Ambassador KP Fabian, who is a former diplomat joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What strategic and economic goals might the US and India each be pursuing with this trade deal? Beyond just lowering tariffs, how could it reshape their bilateral relationship?
Thank you. My reaction to this deal is rather mixed. On the one hand, we all should be relieved that there is a settlement, because the absence of a settlement was hurting India very much, with our rupee going down and other matters too, because geopolitics being what it is, if country A does not have good relations with the United States, then country A's negotiations with countries B, C, D, E, F and all that, the country A will find itself in a weaker position. So, therefore, it is a good thing that this seems to be getting settled. But when I look at the terms, I'm less happy, and I do not see why India should agree to buy $500 billion worth of technology, energy, and all that from the United States. Another thing is that it is President Trump who is announcing that India is going to buy oil from Venezuela. Now, this is his style because he announced the other day that Mexico will stop sending oil to Cuba. In other words, it is for him to announce which country will sell oil to another country. Now, this is rather disturbing. And one more problem I find is that when India buys energy from the United States, the price is not determined based on commercial consideration. It is based on political considerations that makes it more expensive. But having said all that, I think it is good that we have settled it. But let me also share one more concern. President Trump has said that Prime Minister Modi has agreed to move towards, not the word, move towards zero tariff for American exports to India. Now, this is exactly what Trump has done with other partners, with EU, for example, with UK, for example. So Trump has succeeded up to this moment in imposing on others, X tariffs for their exports to America and zero tariff for American exports to their countries. Now, this is grossly unfair and unjust.
And who is actually benefiting the most from this agreement? Is it American businesses, Indian industries, or is it for the benefit of the political leaders themselves?
I wouldn't say it is for the benefit of the political leaders themselves, but I would say that from this, America is benefiting more. But as I said earlier, it was hurting India more than it was hurting America. So I don't think we should mind that it is benefiting America more.
Thank you. Don't go too far, as we will be coming back to you very shortly. Washington's new top diplomat in Venezuela, Laura Dogu, says she has discussed a possible political transition following the ouster of Nicolas Maduro. US Chief of Mission Laura Dogu said she met with interim President Delcy Rodriguez and raised American plans for stabilization, economic recovery, reconciliation and transition process. The statement, posted on the US Embassy's social media account, signals a potential reset in relations between Caracas and Washington. On the same day, Rodriguez named former Foreign Minister Felix Plasencia to lead Venezuela's diplomatic mission to the United States, marking a major shift after ties were cut in 2019. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado said she would consider meeting Rodriguez to define a transition timeline, but warned the interim government remains part of the same power structure. Let's listen in to what Venezuelan Foreign Affairs Minister Yvonne Gil had said about the meeting.
Flores, acabamos de sostener una reunión muy importante, una reunión de la presidenta encargada Delcy Rodríguez, junto con el presidente de la Asamblea Nacional, Jorge Rodríguez, recibiendo a la representante diplomática del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, la señora Laura Dogu, quien ha arribado al país para iniciar esta fase de conversación, esta fase de trabajo, esta agenda de trabajo que ha anunciado nuestra presidenta encargada del tema de Venezuela. Hemos hecho un repaso, de la agenda común, sobre todo en los temas energéticos, temas comerciales, temas políticos, temas económicos y la instalación tanto en Venezuela de la representación diplomática del gobierno de los Estados Unidos,